Now, many of the parents took this situation very hard. They felt that this is not going to work. They felt that the integration of these 11 black students in Milford High School would probably cause more than just an educational issue. They felt that it would be beginning of interracial dating. They felt that it would be part of blacks living in our neighborhoods and so forth. So many parents pulled their kids out of school. Now, it was very interesting that we had a lot of the white community in support of the integration. They felt very strongly that all kids should have a quality education, and not just the white kids. And we had many parents come to us and say, keep up the good fight, we're there for you.
Right.
And many others decided to, I'm not going to send my kid back to the school anymore. But as the crowds began to build, and every morning we'd be picked up by the state policeman who would, not friendly, he would just open the back door, not say a word, never say good morning.
Right.
And you get in the back of the police car and they take you to school and drop you off. And then we'd have to walk through this gauntlet of white spectators and protesters. 15
years old? Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah. And it got to the point where you could be sitting in a classroom looking out the window and there'd be people cussing you out from the side of the school, looking in the windows while you're sitting in class.
Right.
And we kind of stuck together because we felt that there was strength in numbers, and that we knew that if something happened, that maybe, you know, by having us all together, we could probably defend whatever may happen. But it was a difficult period to go through. And it's interesting that I wrote this book because I felt very strongly that those 11 students never really had a voice. It was never heard about what happened, what they did, what their lives were like, what they gained from this educational. Many of the 11, Milford 11, felt that that 28 days, and by the way, it was only 28 days that we were in the white school. Those 28 days defined who they were.
Do you feel that way?
I don't.
Okay.
I went on from those, in fact, I graduated from, I went on to...
Outstanding Soldier of 1963.
Outstanding Soldier. I went on to become a vice president of a company in New Jersey. I went on to get a college education, and I felt that those 28 days was not going to determine who I was in life. And some others felt very strongly. Ronnie was another one who felt that it was not going to determine his life, and he went on to greater and greater things because of the fact that this was not going to define who he was. But some of the other students, it was very difficult for them to talk about it. In fact, my wife tells the story. I got married and I never talked to her about it all. In fact, until college students began to come to my house, they were writing their thesis for graduate school, and they say, I'd like to talk to you about the Milford 11, the incident in Milford. And my wife is over on the couch listening to this gentleman with a tape recorder record my comments, and she said, honey, what were you involved in? Were you involved in something?
Right.
And you didn't tell me about it? What was going on? And I said, nah, don't worry about it, it's nothing. So I had put it out of my mind, put it out of my vocabulary for a long period of time. What brought it back was the 50th anniversary versus Brown versus Boyd. A gentleman, Ed Key, came to me with his thesis. Another one coming to me to say, look, I wrote a thesis and I'd like to be able to have your input. And I felt, here's another guy working on his graduate degree and now wants to get comments from me. And realizing that, I just felt, here's another guy, and I just, kind of shook it off. But then he sent me his thesis, and I said to him, it's a good thesis. I even had a grade on the top, it was A+ or something. And I said to him, Ed, it's a good story. I like what you said, but where am I? What happened? Why didn't you interview for your thesis any of the 11 black students that were part of the integration of Milford in 1954? Well, we couldn't find you. We don't know where you were. And I said, well, why me? He says, well, your name started with C, Camp, and we decided to have you, to call you by your name. And that's how I got chosen to be part of the Brown versus Education 50th anniversary. So Joe Biden and President of the University of Delaware and so forth. And from that, the interest of the story began to grow again. And I began to talk about it again after 50 years. Then I explained it to my wife, what we went through. We tried to integrate schools in Lower Delaware, and it ended up being not an opportunity. But in hindsight, the city of Milford did give us a historical marker 50 years later. And our name is on the school bill. Our 11 names are on the school for the challenge and the struggle that we went through in 1954. So we're very proud of that fact, that they did recognize us for what we went through, the challenges that we faced in 1954.
What happened to the community during that time? You were in school for 28 days,
right.
and then someone else came, Mr. Bowles came.
Right.
Tell me what happened.
Well, what happened was, the interesting thing is that the white parents felt very strongly that this is not going to be, that I am not going to allow my kid to go to school with African American students. We feel that this is going to be a disastrous opportunity, because I want my child to get a good education. I don't want my child to be integrated with a bunch of colored kids. So what they did, they went and hired a used car salesman named Brian Bowles from Baltimore. And he was very clever. There's some tapes in the archives in Dover that express what kind of personality he was. Now, this was a slick-talking 36-year-old guy that came to town and said, look, here's what I'm going to do for you people. They have Lewis L. Redding for their lawyers, so you need someone on your side to defend your point of view. And we're not going to if this is what you want, you don't want integration, we're not going to have integration. But to do this, I'm going to need financing to be able to do this. So he had this, outside of Harrington, Delaware, he had this rally in which he asked people to put whatever they could in these peach baskets. But believe it or not, they filled the peach basket with money. Some up to $20 and $50. Now, back in '54, that was a significant amount of money. So he raised a lot of money to defend this integration of Milford High School. And he stood up in front of the school and said, my daughter will not go to any school where they have colored kids. And the white community, the racist community that was presenting this, they felt that we needed him. We need this because we're not going to have our kids go to school. So what happened was, after Bryant Bowles came to town and he rallied a lot of white people to go against the integration, there were other whites who felt very strongly that we should go to the school. So what we did, we ended up having a cooling off period because things got really volatile, and school was threatened by all kinds of violence. In fact, they burned a cross on one of the school board's lawn. The superintendent? Yes, of the school.
And then what happened to Reverend Fisher?
Reverend Fisher, we had a rally. We had basically a meeting about what we should do, and we were told, hang in there, be strong, do not let this get to you. We're going to continue the fight. We think it's right. The Supreme Court of the United States says you should be able to get a quality education. So we're going to make sure that you continue to go. So we went back to school, and I went out for the football team. Ronnie Van and myself went out to the football team. We made the team, and in fact, we were pretty good for the time we were there. And then all of a sudden, they felt that this is a little bit too much, and we're going to have to suspend the integration of 1954 and those 11 black students. So we ended up going to an all-black high school.
Okay, now on that, we got a segue because we have another guest that's coming on. But this is a fascinating story, and it's more than can be told in the time that we've had this evening. So what we definitely would like to do is, what do you think? We got to have this gentleman back on. I would love to have you come back, Mr. Kemp. Because I have a lot of questions.
And I would like, I'm sorry. I need to keep cutting you off tonight. I'm sorry.
It's all good. I have a lot of questions because I know that there's more that occurred. And like you said, you didn't allow that 28-day period to define who you are. But there are some things, I'm sure, that a perspective that was gained, and that's what we want to talk to you about some more.
Sure.
Okay?
Absolutely.
The other thing that we'd like to do is we'd like to invite Mr. Pritchett and Mrs. Pritchett to come on, because you said that you know Mr. Pritchett. Yeah. He is part of our family. So he's on our program all the time. We support him. He supports us. Right. We would love to have you come back and have a conversation with all of us. Can you do that?
Sure.
That's fantastic, Mr.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Thank you so much.
Michael, appreciate it very much.
All right.
Thank you.